I am back with video 5, discussing this webpage with its questions to ask an atheist. Yes, video 5. One on each category of questions it has: logic, morality, and science. And this is number 2, dealing with this little bit of atheist bashing tacked on at the end. As I have stated before, the page is not really about understanding atheists, but it lays bare that they think they have all the answers. These questions are on voice in the Wilderness Ministries, which was founded by Philip Del Rey, who has passed away and won't come to hear me say how wrong this page is in every way. Now it is run by his widow Susan, who gave her heart to Jesus at age 5, which I guess in their world is a bonus. I mean, how lucky for her to figure that out at such a tender age. And Susan is now married to Greg Savitt, who is a Messianic Jew, partly converted to Christianity because of Susan. Let's finish this shit show of a webpage. Hi, my name is Scarlett, and I am an atheist and skeptic, and I will be glad to finish what looks like not even a rough draft of anything usable. It's like Phil or Susan or Greg, whichever one put this page together, just started brainstorming and never actually took the time to clean it up and put it into anything really coherent. Or maybe, instead of the less is more attitude, they thought, let's just bury people in detail. I don't even think the page is to help evangelize, but to drive home the idea that atheists are bad dummy-dums who don't know anything. This last section asks, what makes atheism irrational? And by the time I'm finished, I think you will join me in concluding that this was a bit of projection on the part of the writer. This whole page is irrational, an exercise in misunderstanding atheism, science, philosophy, and pretty much everything. Some of these questions or lines of reasoning might work against a person who hasn't put much thought into, well, anything they think. But if you've thought about and researched even minimally, this won't hit anywhere for you. Under this question, what makes atheism irrational, the writer says they have 3 points. But under each point, there's so much more. And you might wonder as we go along if we haven't gone through all of this before in an earlier question. And good on you. Good memory. Yes, this page has already gone through all of this already. Let's go look at these 3 points times however many subpoints there are. Number 1 asks, why is there something rather than nothing? The material world exists. This is not an illusion. So just on this first question, I have to ask why you would think that there would be a nothing. Why is nothing the default? Why isn't something the default? Why isn't the material world the default? And while, I like to think the material world exists and it is not an illusion, I'm not sure that you have established that. And this is something that, even in philosophy has been debated and discussed and might merit a little more discussion. So the first cue under this point, do you think the material world exists? Now, of course, I do think the material world exists, but, this could be an interesting philosophical discussion. The second cue, do you think the things that exist have always existed? Are you talking about the things that exist right now? Because, of course, the things that exist right now have not always existed, but they did come through natural processes to exist. And they weren't just poofed into existence. Everything that I've seen to exist came from some place that already existed. But maybe you're talking about matter and energy, and maybe that was always potential in the singularity that our universe started from. Cue number 3, what caused things to come into existence? I don't know everything, but natural processes. You could probably find some natural process. And we get to the A, the answer, which I'm not sure this answers anything. Only 2 possibilities, either something caused it or nothing caused it. What do you think? Well, I'm not sure nothing can cause anything. But when you say something, are you thinking of a thing? Or are you thinking of something in a more abstract way, like natural processes caused it? So everything that has come to exist through natural processes. You don't need an agent for that. So A, I don't think whoever wrote these questions had really thought through what they were asking, and I'm not sure that they know what they're trying to get at. I am sure that what they want to get at is that God did all of this, but you haven't established that through any of these questions, and this has nothing to do with atheism, and it has nothing to do with much of anything, really. Let's go on to point 2. the problem of evil. Before we see how the geniuses at Voice in the Wilderness Ministries decide to ask questions to atheists to reveal their irrationality, let's recall that the problem of evil is a question about how a tri-omni God allows for so much pain and suffering to occur in the world. If he really is all-loving and all-knowing, and he chose this universe, and he's all-powerful, which means he can make any universe, why is this the one that he chose to make, where there is so much pain and suffering? That is the evil. So let's see what we've got here. First, Q. What would be the most morally reprehensible act you can think of? Well, I can think of a lot. We can just go with mass murder, let's say. Q. When you say this is evil, are you describing the actions themselves? Are you simply describing your own personal feelings about those actions? Or are you defining what your culture's point of view is? An apostrophe would be nice for that one. It probably is a combination of these things. Probably I am reacting personally to something that I think is horrifying, because mass murder means people lose their lives earlier than they should have. Most likely, at least some of those people suffered horribly. And it's possibly also a part of the culture I live in. For example, if I had lived in ancient Judea with the Israelites going around killing the Canaanites and all of the Hittites and I don't know, the other ites out there, or God drowning the whole world and only allowing Noah and his family to live, I might think that mass murder is just peachy. We have these two statements up next. One, if they are describing their own personal point of view or their own culture's point of view, again, an apostrophe would be nice, then the objection to the problem of evil just disappeared. You haven't established that. We can have our own personal points of view, and we can have a cultural point of view, too, on evil. But okay, point number 2, what they are doing, that point is defining subjective evil, not objective evil. And okay, so what? Now, I have said in past videos that for me, evil is more of a description of action. It's not that there is some energy or force that is called evil. There's not like a fight between good and evil, or God represents good and the devil represents evil. Evil is a descriptor of actions. I look at acts and I decide, are they morally good, morally neutral, or morally bad? And it could even be evil. I used to actually hate the word evil because of this religious application of the word and the connotations with it, and this notion that it is some kind of energy or force out there. And so I actually stopped using it and would just, so that was reprehensible. I would use some other word. But I'm fine with applying evil in this way when things cause so much pain and suffering, especially when this was targeted pain and suffering for the purposes of causing pain and suffering. Anyway, let's go on. Let's go back to Voice in the Wilderness. We've got some follow-up comments. The argument of evil as an argument against God's existence requires evil to be objective. For evil to be objective, then good must be objective as well. Again, this is not the problem of evil. The problem of evil is, why would a tri-omni God allow so much pain and suffering? It's not about whether objective or subjective evil exists. So this person has misunderstood the problem of evil. As an atheist, where do you get objective morality, moral absolutes, moral laws that have intrinsic value in a world where all that exists is time, space, and matter? I don't know. I don't know what that has to do with that. We as humans have decided to enact moral laws, moral principles. We're the ones that get to determine this. We get together collectively. We have our subjective opinions, and we get together collectively, and we can make laws. We can make social rules, we can make ethical rules, and there is language that goes with that. It's not like it's just my opinion, man. We can put language, and we can go to a court of law, we can go to ethics boards to decide if this is good or bad. And yes, we all have our own opinion. Let's keep going. You cannot have moral law without a moral lawgiver. How do you get good and evil, virtue or vice from biology? Well, you don't. Again, somebody is misunderstanding how this all works. You can say that evolution has equipped us to be empathetic beings that work together. We live in communities and we work towards projects together, and therefore we have to have rules for how to behave with one another. But we're the ones that put this together. If there were no humans, there would be no morality. All right, that's how that fits in. Moving on. How do you get right and wrong from genetic mutations and natural selection? Just answered that. It's not the actual mutations or the selection. It is the fact that we are equipped to work together and to be in community. And part of that is we need to have empathy with one another, and we have to want to work together. For evil to be a legitimate argument, i.e. a real problem that affects us all, it must be objective evil, that is independent or outside of the mind. Well, the actions are definitely outside of the mind, but it is the mind that helps us decide if things are good, neutral, or evil. Going on, subjective evil is dependent on the individual mind. It's your opinion or the opinion of the group. All right, fine, but God's word is just subjective too. It's his subjective opinion. Moving on. Evolution can only produce relativistic morality, and if relativism is true, then there is no problem with evil, because what is evil to you may not be evil to me. Okay, well that's true, and that's why as a society we get together to develop language to decide what things are good, bad, neutral, that kind of thing. It's why we've developed the laws. As imperfect as our system is, it's still a way to work together and come up with a group idea about what these things are. This isn't just me saying this. It is us as a community coming together to develop rules. And finishing up this section, followed through to its logical conclusion, you would not be able to say that what Hitler did was wrong, or evil, in fact. Adolf believed what he was doing was right and good by expediting the evolutionary process because he believed he was removing the weaker races. It's a little bit more complicated than Adolf was interested in evolution. And sure, eugenics played a role in what he was doing, but it was also good old anti-Semitism and racism and other isms that you could throw out there. But we can, in fact, decide if what Hitler did was wrong or evil, because we as humans can set up criteria. We can decide what is wrong and what is evil. And we can decide that, for example, mass murder is wrong. Now, in the Bible, God commands mass murder, and that's okay. But we can decide as humans, we won't tolerate that. And we think that causing the suffering of millions of people for the sake of just another group of people is wrong and bad and should be punished. I mean, we don't need things outside of humans to decide if things are good, neutral, or bad. It's just that simple. Let's go to point 3 of why atheists are irrational. Consciousness cannot be accounted for in an atheistic worldview. I don't see why not. Just assert that, I guess. Just assert it, and it is true. There's a second 3, I don't know why. Some think consciousness is an illusion. Now, it is true that there are some people that say that consciousness is an illusion, that consciousness is an emergent property of the functioning of our brain, and it's the thing that we think of as consciousness is not real. We're not going to get into the philosophical part of it because I'm not sure I would be very good at explaining it. We're just going to keep going and seeing what Voice in the Wilderness has to say about this. The first cue is, what is an illusion? And this is simply when we think that something is there that isn't. We are misled. It can be visual, it can be oral. Maybe our consciousness is an illusion. Let's go on to cue number 2 under this point. Isn't an illusion like a mirage when your consciousness is appeared to falsely? I'm not even sure what that means. I would like a little bit more clarity on what the person was thinking. Q, can rocks have illusions? I don't think so, because rocks don't have brains that I know of. Can an unconscious person have an illusion? They can be dreaming and then they can wake up and think that that was real, and that can be an illusion. If the brain is still functioning, they can have an illusion. Next cue, if consciousness is having an illusion, is the illusion of having an illusion, and how would you know you were having one? And I think that we're dealing with 2 different kinds of illusions here. We have the illusion, our consciousness, we think we have consciousness, but we actually don't. And then since we have consciousness, we can imagine we see something or we hear something that is not there, and that's the secondary illusion. And how would you know you were having one? Welcome to the world of Descartes. Go read Descartes. All right, illustration. Student to the lecture, how do I know I even exist? Hey, good question. Lecturer, whom shall I say is asking? Well, you're just going to be a shithead. Are you going to have a real dialogue? Next part, picture your mother washing dishes at the sink. Okay. What color was her hair? Was she doing them by hand or loading them in the dishwasher? Okay. Next part. How about guilt? Have you ever felt guilty? I swear this is where this page goes. This is not me making this up. I don't know what the association is. And sure, if I've done something that's harmed somebody, I felt guilty. The solution is repentance and forgiveness. Okay. I don't know what this has to do with any of this. That is why Christianity is the most logical and satisfying answer to the ultimate question. What is the ultimate question? I'm not sure that I am satisfied or that this is logical. Moving on. Now, where was your mother just now? Was she in your brain? No, if we cut open your brain, when we see your mother in there. Oh my gosh. I don't know what wonderful point this person thought they were making. You know, this reminds me, there is one of these interesting thought experiments that come out of Eastern philosophy that when a bell rings, where is the sound? Is the sound in the bell? Is the sound in your head? Is the sound in the air? And of course, we can explain scientifically that when a bell rings, it creates vibrations that our ears can interpret as being a bell ringing. But the sound itself is sort of in between all of this, because if the bell was ringing and there was nobody there to perceive those vibrations, there wouldn't be sound, there would just be vibrations. And so the idea is that this is all in an in-between space. So we have brains that can recall memories and images. And so it's just silly to think that you would cut open somebody and something that they had perceived outside of themselves would be like stuck in their brain like a real thing. I don't even know where this comes from. All right, let's move on. When an atheist speaks on matters of morality from his own worldview, in order for his argument to make sense, he must borrow from the biblical worldview. Where did we get that from? Like, why is this a thing now? And that is because he lives in God's world and doesn't even know it. And ultimately, his argument is a complete contradiction. So what argument are we talking about? And how do we know we live in God's world? I live in this world and I don't know that God is a part of it. Let's keep going. Take Richard Dawkins as an example. Yeah, it's always like Richard Dawkins, isn't it? He is the famous British evolutionist from Oxford University. His atheism forces him to say that there is no such thing as an absolute standard of morality. Fine. And under very next page, he is telling us how immoral God is. You know, grammar much? He says God is a sadomasochistic, homophobic, anti-woman, a cosmic bully, and an ethnic cleanser, etc. Yeah, like I said, this looks like somebody just started brainstorming and didn't clean this up. Where does he get that from? None of these accusations of God being immoral make sense in an amoral atheist worldview. Okay, so it's not an amoral worldview. Again, we can decide, like sadomasochistic has a definition, homophobic has a definition, anti-woman has a definition. We can go look up that definition and say, does God meet that definition? You know, God, the character, obvious. We don't need an absolute standard of anything. We just need a definition. When we say that somebody is homophobic, what does that mean? Then we can look at a behavior and say, is that behavior this thing? And we can say, yes, that person is homophobic, or no, that person is not homophobic. It's that simple. We don't need a God telling us this. We don't need some absolute standard. This is just silly. Anyway, moving on. If there is no morality, how can you deny the existence of God on the basis of morality? Well, this is just all put together so poorly. And I'm not sure if people are denying the existence of God based on morality. I mean, we can look at the character in the Bible and decide if we think that being is moral or not, if that being is really what Christians say he is. But I don't know that anybody is saying that God doesn't exist because of morality. I think that they're saying, I don't believe in God because I don't see any evidence. You only have a little bit more to go of this. Next, objective reality and morality can only come from a biblical worldview, something he says does not exist. Citation freaking needed, man. So here we have Richard Dawkins living in a contradiction. No, you're wrong. Any thinking person can look at the real world and realize that if something is evil, then there must be something good to measure it by. I don't know if this is like a really good way to phrase this. We can make definitions. We can say, these are the criteria that fulfill this thing. And yeah, we have these opposites. So if we say that something is good, then there's bad on the other side, or evil. But this is silly. Next up, the atheist who refuses to believe in God on the basis that God is immoral, yet says there is no morality, is a walking contradiction. He does not even realize it, not because he can't see it. It's because he won't see it. He can't see the forest because of the trees. You just don't really understand what's going on. This is the problem. I think a lot of people will say, I don't believe in God. I don't see evidence. But if I look at that book, the Bible, and decide what I think of that character, and you can tell me, I think that God is all-knowing, and I can look at that book and say, well, he didn't know these things. You will tell me this being is all-loving, omnibenevolent, and I can look at the book and go, here are a bunch of things that are not all-loving in my estimation, and sure, that's my subjective view, but I am using criteria. Like when you cause a lot of suffering, and you cause suffering for stupid reasons, like the Ark of the Covenant is about to fall and somebody touches it and you kill that person, or a town is going to be destroyed and you tell somebody don't turn around, and when they do, you kill that person. Those are ridiculous reasons to kill somebody. And you can say, well, they disobeyed. Like, that's not really that big of a deal. These are small things and you're causing so much pain and suffering because of them. All right, let's finish this up. Our last sentence that's not a Bible quote. Plants produce plants. Plants cannot become animals. Animals produce animals. They cannot become men. Humans produce humans. Man cannot become God. Well, that's because God doesn't exist. These are genius statements, and I don't even know if a lot of this could be described as stream of consciousness, because stream of consciousness is usually a little more coherent than this end of pages. This, again, was just like, what else do we got? What else we got? And we wind it down with Genesis 1:1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. That's the end of this page. But Voice in the Wilderness Ministries did not create logic and did not get at why people are atheists, or even come close to establishing that atheism is illogical or irrational or anything like that. What did you think of all this nattering on the Voice in the Wilderness Ministries to prove how dummy-dumb, irrational people atheists are? Put it in the comments below, and while you're down there, you can like, subscribe, and do all the YouTube stuff. You're on YouTube, you know what to do. And if you like what I do, you can buy me a coffee. That link is in the description below. Thanks to everyone who has bought me a coffee. It's really appreciated, and I will see you in the next one. Bye for now.